All right, all right. How you guys doing tonight, New Point? You guys doing good? You guys ready for like Christmas break? It's like right around the corner. Like you guys sound like, man, I'm just ready for like the year to end. Yeah, some of us we don't get Christmas break. But I'm excited for you guys. I'm excited for you guys that like you get to enjoy that at the end of the year. But you guys have a good week? Solid week? So week, fair enough. All right, my name is Wes. I'm one of the teaching pastors here, and I just want to say, man, I'm excited you guys can make it out tonight. I know it's like a crazy time of the year. Holidays are coming up. You guys are wiped because you got finals and everything. But I'm stoked to have you guys here, especially for the last week of the Beautiful Mess series, because I think this is going to be like impactful. I think we're going to get a chance to maybe like view our lives a little bit differently tonight. So as you guys remember that video, we've played that every week. And what that video talks about is it talks about people are giving their impression of what art is, right? So they talk about, man, art is something that is impactful. Art is something that is put on display. Art is something that is put in the world for people to view and realize that there's something beautiful to it. Art is an expression of passion. And a verse that we've been using a lot every single week is this verse in Ephesians 2, where Paul is talking really from like the perspective of God, and he says, you are God's handiwork. He says, you are his masterpiece. He says, you are his artwork. And for me, like that's something that really needs to resonate with us. That's something that needs to sit in our soul. Like we need to realize that no matter what we've done, no matter what junk we've been through, no matter how we view ourselves, no matter what skill set we see ourselves having or not having, when God looks at us, he sees us as beautiful. He sees us as his artwork. He sees us as an expression of his passion. He sees us as something that he put in the world to affect change. He sees us as something that he can show off, that he loves and he cares about. And I think, man, that is so important to realize, this idea that we may be a mess. We may walk in here tonight with some junk. We may walk in here tonight with some past. Maybe we walk in here with some things that we wish were different. Maybe we walk in here with some things that we wish we could change. Maybe right now we're going through like the toughest time in our life and it's difficult and we feel like our life is just a mess. And it's a beautiful thought that God takes our mess and he makes it his artwork. He makes it his masterpiece. He makes it beautiful. And so that's what we've been talking about the last few weeks. And this week I want to talk about, as our last week, what is really going to inhibit that in our lives? What is going to stop that from happening? What is going to kind of put like the kibosh on like God being able to do that in our lives? And I think ultimately it's us. I think the only person that can really stop that from happening is us, is if we make that choice. But before we do that, let's go ahead and pray real quick, and then we'll jump into this. God, we are just so grateful that we get a chance to come here. God, we are so grateful for how much you love us and you pursue us and you care about us. God, you care about the details of our lives. You care about what we're going through and what we experience. You care about our hurt. You care about our pain. You care about our joy. You care about our goals. You're a God that loves us, a God that's proud of us, a God that wants to show us off, a God that pursues us. God, we are so thankful for that. God, I pray that tonight we are impacted by you. God, I pray that we walk out of here different than the way we walked in. In your name, amen. And so like I said, I was thinking about this. I was thinking about like, what's this thing that can keep us from allowing God to like take our lives and make it something beautiful? And I think ultimately it's us. I think ultimately the thing that is going to keep that from happening is us. It's going to be our desires. It's going to be us wanting to run our life the way that we want to run it. And so it kind of got me wondering. It got me wondering this week, like, what is life? What does that look like? And I remember a moment, like, I think it was like actually just like a couple days ago. Like, we got like a little dog now, which I feel like has consumed my life, to be honest, because like I have to babysit this thing 24/7. But it like woke up super early, and like, so I have like my cup of coffee and I'm like outside as this dog's doing whatever he's gonna do. And it's like freezing cold, right? And it was like one of those moments, I don't know if you ever have these moments where all of a sudden you like experience the details. By that, I mean, maybe you realize things that you normally don't realize like on a daily basis. So I'm walking out in the cold and I can feel the cold. I can feel like the blood rushing to my head. I can feel like freezing cold, but at the same time, my hand is hot because I got this cup of coffee, and I can see my breath going in and out. And it's kind of like this surreal moment where you realize like all these things that kind of come together that is life. And I'm like standing there thinking like, man, this is beautiful. Like our God is so huge to put this all together. And then my dog pooped right in front of me and it totally ruined the moment. But like if you think about that, like there's these moments that we have, right? There's these moments that we have that we realize like how intricate life really is, but for some reason, more often than not, we don't see that. More often than not, like the white noise of life, it just kind of drowns that out. It kind of drowns out like experiencing life. I think maybe we experience life to a degree, but do we really? Do we really experience life in the way that Jesus has called us to experience it? Do we really like live the kind of life that Jesus is calling us to live and calling us to experience? And I was reading about that, and Jesus has like this really interesting way, and Paul does it too. But Jesus has this really interesting way of like paradoxing and contrasting like death and life. He talks about it a lot, this idea of like you're living, but you're not really living. You're dead in some way, even though you're walking around alive. And in Matthew 16, he says this. So if you guys have your Bibles, go ahead and turn there real quick. I won't give you a whole lot of time because we're going to try and do like what we've been doing with the breakout session. So I'm going to speed through this. But in Matthew 16:24, Jesus says this. Then Jesus told his disciples, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and he forfeits his soul? So there's this idea that like whoever follows me, like whoever's going to follow Jesus has to like lose themselves to some degree. Like they have to be willing to deny themselves. They have to be willing to like take their life and lay it down to some degree. He says whoever is like trying to like save themselves, whoever is trying to do life their way, whoever is trying to do it under their own wisdom, make their own choices, in some way, somehow, they're going to end up losing their life. They're still walking around alive, but like something is missing. Some sort of satisfaction is not going to come as a result. But he says like those that lose it for my sake, meaning like those that give their life to Jesus, those are the ones that really find it. And for me, this is one of the most important verses in the Bible, I think, when we really get this. I don't know how long ago, a while ago, I actually even got like a tattoo about this because I wanted to remember this idea. I wanted to remember this idea that like I have to be willing to give up my life. And I think the way that looks is we give up our desires. See, I think like when I think about this idea of like what is really going to keep us from our like relationship with Jesus, what's going to keep us from moving forward, I think ultimately it's our desires. I think it's our desires for popularity. It's our desires for partying. It's our desires for a boyfriend or a girlfriend. It's our desire to like make our own choices and do our own thing. And like somehow this has a way of like pulling us from God. It has a way of like pulling us at its core. It has a way of pulling us from life. It has a way of like pulling us into death because we get so caught up with our own stuff. And so Jesus says, this is the idea. This is the idea that you give your life to him. Essentially you say, man, I am deciding that like I'm going to live my life the way that Jesus has called me to live my life. I'm not going to like pursue all these things in the world that I think may be good for a moment. Like they may feel fine for a moment, but in the end, they won't satisfy. And you know, like I've been down that road, man. Like I didn't become a Christian until I was a sophomore in college. And when I was in high school, that was like, man, that was my goal. I wanted to be as popular as I could be. I wanted to drink more than anybody else. I wanted to experience that. And I remember in the end, like it didn't work out the way that I thought it was. I mean, I accomplished whatever I wanted to accomplish, but I didn't feel the satisfaction that I thought would come with whatever accomplishment, right? I could out-drink everybody, but that didn't make me somehow feel cooler at the end of the day. It didn't satisfy what I thought would satisfy it. And I think that's what happens. I think when we pursue our own desires, ultimately it doesn't satisfy the way that we think it'll satisfy. And so when Jesus is talking about this, he's talking about like at its core, living is ultimately to possess, to desire, to be empowered by a life other than your own. It's to be empowered by Jesus. And I think this is like something that's so interesting about what Jesus says when he says, man, you have to give up your whole life. Like Jesus is not interested in like restructuring your life. He's not interested in like taking your life as it is and tweaking a few things and sounding a little bit better and looking a little bit better and changing your attitude a little bit better. Like Jesus was never interested in like self-help. That was for like the YouTube channels. Like Jesus was never into this idea of self-help. He didn't want to just do that. He wanted to come in and he wanted to completely change your life. He wanted to give you a completely new life. And I think this is important because that means if your life is not just restructured, if your life is not just remodeled, if it doesn't just look slightly different, you don't just talk slightly different, you don't just act slightly different, you don't just resemble someone slightly different in front of others, but you have a completely new life, that means your desires change. That means something at your core changes. But I think generally, I think we don't want to do that. I think we have this idea that maybe I can even say I'm a Christian, maybe I can walk into church, maybe I can claim Christ, but I still want to cling to some of these old things. I still want to cling to some of these old desires. Maybe I even want to pursue some of them, right? Maybe I want to come to church on Sunday, maybe I want to come on Wednesday, but there's other nights of the week that I'm going to pursue what I want to pursue, and I'm just going to see what happens, right? And we even say things like, man, it's my mistake to make. It's my life to live. And yet Jesus looks at that and says, man, it's far bigger than a mistake. It's far bigger than that. You're losing your life. Somewhere inside, you're dying. And it's crazy that this God looks at you and says, man, I died for you. I pursue you. I love you. You're my handiwork. You're my artwork. And yet because you're going your own way, you're choosing to die on the inside. And so I think we have to have this idea that we don't cling to that old stuff. We don't simply remodel. We don't simply rearrange. Because when all you do is remodel, right? When all you do is restructure, when all you do is make some improvements, it means that the core still remains intact. Your inner desires, your inner core still remains intact. So this is what I mean by that. Maybe this is an easy way to think of that. So me and Chelsea, we have a duplex now, which is a pretty big step up from an apartment. We felt like adults. And so as a result, we have 2 bedrooms now, right? We have our bedroom and then we have the second bedroom that we were forever trying to figure out what to do with. And so now we're trying to turn it into this studio / home office deal because Chelsea does photography and I need an office. And so we're trying to figure that out, right? And so eventually we have all these ideas in our head of what we want to do and how we want to paint it and what we want to put on the walls and how we want to make it look. And I think when we're done, you'll walk in there and you'll be like, man, this is awesome. This looks so much better than I remember it. It looks so good. And really what happened there is we remodeled it, right? We changed the appearance, we changed the outside, we made it look a lot better. When you walk in there, you're like, this looks a lot better than when you had a storage closet in your second bedroom. But we didn't actually change anything at its core, right? We didn't strip down beams. We didn't put up new drywall. All of the stuff on the inside remained the same. And so when Jesus comes into your life, he says, man, I don't want to just remodel. I don't want to just put paint up. I don't want to just put some things on the wall while the beams rot on the inside. He's like, I want to give you something completely new. And so I think that's what happens so often in our lives is we keep our core desires still. We keep these things that we still want to pursue and we hide them deep inside of ourselves and maybe we change the outside, but we never truly change the inside. And Jesus looks at us and says, man, I want to give you something completely new. He says this in 2 Corinthians 5:17, Paul says this. He says, therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. The old has gone, the new is here. And so Paul understands this. He understands this idea that when Jesus comes into your life, he doesn't just change a little bit. He doesn't just remodel. He doesn't just restructure. He doesn't just fix you up a little bit, but he wants to take your life and he wants to make it something that you couldn't do on your own. And I think maybe this is like kind of the core idea behind this series, that he wants to take the mess, right? And I think we have an idea that we hide our mess and we hide our desires that maybe we even wish that we didn't have. We try and hide them deep down inside. And Jesus says, man, that's exactly what I want. I don't want the stuff. I don't want you to try and have to hide that stuff, but that's exactly what I want. And I want to take your mess. I want to take maybe the things that you wish you didn't do, and every time you did it, you're like, man, stinking A, are you kidding me? I did it again. Like he wants that. He wants like the stuff that like you look at your past, you're like, man, I'm stinking ashamed of that. I wish that didn't exist. I wish I had like made a different choice there. And that's exactly what he wants. He takes the part of your lives that maybe right now you're going through like the hardest time of your life, and you're like, man, this stinks. This is so difficult. This is so hard. And you don't want to talk about it. And you kind of want to hide it away. And that's exactly what he wants. Maybe we take the stuff that we look in the mirror and we say, man, I wish I could do this. I wish I had this skill set. I wish I looked that way. And it's those thoughts and those feelings. That's exactly what he wants. And he wants to take those and he wants to make it beautiful. And I think this is what Christ does. He comes in and he takes something that was imperfect. He takes something that has flaws. He takes something that maybe you wish you could change, and he makes it his masterpiece. And for me, this is like one of the greatest thoughts out there. This is like one of the greatest thoughts, that this God that created everything that we see, that created atoms that can split and split and split until we can't even split them anymore. We can't figure it out. Science can't understand it. He makes immune systems that somehow fight off diseases that shouldn't even be able to fight off, but somehow they attack back. He creates our DNA in a way that somehow when you're born, it's already decided what you will look like and how you will act and what your personality will be. It's insane. The God that is so complex, the God that is so beautiful, the God that created a universe that is so large, we can't even get to the edge of it, and it just keeps expanding. The God that created a mountain that you can stand on and you can see so much of the earth and it's so gorgeous and so beautiful. The same God that when you get into an airplane and you get up in the clouds and you look out and it seems like it just goes forever. His hands created that, and it's so gorgeous and it's so beautiful, and yet he looks at you and he says, you are my masterpiece. You are my artwork. You, with all of your flaws and all of your mistakes, you are the one that I see as beautiful. You are the one that I want to take into the world and show off. You are the expression of my passion. I think that is the God that we serve, a God that takes our mess and makes it beautiful.